He's so afraid to touch stuff.
Okay, it's 9:30. We will call the meeting to order.
It's 9:30.
Did I see, what did I see? Well, I was figuring we were done. We're in Greenland. I'm sorry. It is 6:30. We'll call the meeting to order. The first item is roll call, please.
All right, Schnelly,
Here.
Bano,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Molzon,
Here.
Smithback,
Here.
Van Kampen,
Yeah.
Pulda,
Here.
and Nelson is absent.
Thank you.
I'll call the village board to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
All right. Van Kampen once again,
Here.
Kirchdorfer,
Here.
Higgins,
Here.
Knitfer is not here, McDaniel, here, Marks, not here either, Lease, and he's not here either, okay.
All right, thank you. Want me to take it from here? First item on here is item number 5, which is business. Items would be discussion and/or potential action. Presentation by village staff and JSD Professional Services. The reason is for due diligence of the former Village Hall building and site at 117 Spring Street and redevelopment concepts. Elise.
All right, getting everything pulled up here. All right. Thanks, everybody, for attending tonight. So we wanted to gather together tonight to speak about former Village Hall property, and as we move towards an RFP, the content of what we want to include in that RFP. As if we can just go to the next slide here, I'll give a little bit of a background on kind of how we got to this point. Looks like my text is sliding off the right side here, but in 2023, a lot of you were involved in a comp plan and park plan update process with Vandewaal. And as it relates to downtown, there was a lot of goals that were expressed related to promoting space for business, more residential opportunities and activity downtown. Kind of on the heels of that, we did a downtown master plan following a lot of facilities, village and public facilities moving out of downtown, as well as just changes to our downtown in general. So both the Village Hall and the Triangle Park spaces were identified as opportunity sites, one of 10 opportunity sites. And again, goals to get more activity, more tax base downtown, as well as just supporting events and community building, placemaking in those spaces. Village Hall is sat vacant almost 3 years now. Actually, I think it was 3 years a couple days ago that we closed and moved over here. So nature has somewhat taken over as time has gone by, and it's been sort of mothballed. But we did have a conversation with the board last summer, and they all voted on moving forward on an RFP, request for proposals to sell the former Village Hall building slash site and look for folks from the outside to get their ideas on how they would reuse or redevelop the site. So as Martin and I were starting to work on the bones of that RFP last fall, we realized that there's probably a lot of information about this building, about this site that anybody is going to want to know before they really spend the time and effort and money to look into a project on the site. So we called our consultants over at JSD that we've worked with on the senior center, on the new library, a lot of other public infrastructure projects to see if they can help us with some of that due diligence work to understand what do we have, what are we dealing with within the building, as well as getting us thinking about the site in general and kind of how that might tie into future projects that we've envisioned with Triangle Park, some of our goals for that space. The parcel, as we'll see, we can go ahead and go to the next page in this context map, and I'll invite Chris up here too. But the parcel that's outlined in yellow there is the entire Village Hall parcel. It includes Waterman Triangle Park, the parking lot, the Village Hall building, as well as the alley. So if we were to sell the building or the site, what all of that parcel do we want to hand over to somebody else? What are we kind of physically talking about in terms of lot size and accessibility there, and also want to make sure that any plans and decisions that we would make about the Village Hall space wouldn't limit us in the future for opportunities for Triangle Park and the parking lot and the alley, and just again want to make sure we're thinking holistically about how all those spaces work together and how we want to work towards achieving some of our goals for downtown. So I'll invite Chris Dawson to introduce himself and come up, and we're going to kind of be going back and forth on a couple slides here, and then we'll end with some discussion questions.
It's surrounded here. Hi, I'm Chris Dawson with JSD Professional Services. We were, as Elise alluded to, we helped do some due diligence on the site and work through some conceptual redevelopment options. Our role is really to help structure the framework for the RFP for what this body kind of moves forward for redeveloping that site.
Can you just make sure you're talking close into the microphone
Sure
so we
thing.
can catch you on the recording?
Yep. There we go. I can hear myself better, for better or worse. So just starting with the context map here, there were a couple of key elements that were identified for consideration as we looked at different options for the site. We were aware of some parking concerns and kind of what would be the impacts to parking in the area. So on this slide, you'll see a parking summary that provides the total counts for street parking as it stands right now, and I kind of say that with the assumption of what Park Street is going to look like, sort of with that next phase of public improvements associated with and adjacent to the senior center parking. And then the second category there is sort of the area parking lots that allow for the public parking as well. So the colorization there is directly out of the downtown plan. And as Elise mentioned, the yellow outline is the overall Village Hall parcel in question.
Do you want me to talk to a couple of these too? We just wanted to include these in the slide deck, and this will be added to the packet later, all these slides for you to refer to. But just some context of some area projects and some kind of current condition photos. But this is the senior center site plan. I think on the previous slide you said there's 86 off-street parking spaces within the senior center parking lot, and then with the rebuild of Park Street with JSD also did the design for that. That'll be a 42 spaces, so a significant increase from what's there now based on, just kind of the parallel parking on one side right now.
And, we're getting a little bit of a haircut on the right side there, but the Village Hall parcel itself currently has 50 on-site stalls. That includes a few stalls that kind of extend into the alley there. Just to the left of the Village Hall as you're looking at it now. the parcel overall has a 28% open space coverage, and we wanted to highlight that because we understand that there is a balance to be had here of the redevelopment function of the site and adding to the community benefit capabilities of the site with the park there and the band shell. And then just to give some perspective, the current building footprint is just over, or just under, I suppose, 8,000 square feet. And just to kind of highlight the history of the site, you can see where the original I believe it was 1941 building, and then 1981, the building addition, just to delineate kind of where that boundary is in the footprint of the building itself. Next slide.
We also just included some of the historical photos. These are taken from the downtown master plan that was done in '24, but what the building looked like upon completion on the left, and then on the right is a photo from when the building was under construction. It was part of the New Deal. This was the Works Progress Administration that constructed the building, so kind of a cool picture. I think we have a couple of these framed around the building. And then these are just some street view pictures, but again, if we need to refer to them later, but where you can see the 80s atrium, and to the north is that newer wing, and then this is the older side of the building closer to Waterman Triangle Park, and the entrance there on the south side.
All right. So part of our scope was to look into the condition of the building. So we partnered with 1901 to look at a lot of the mechanicals, electrical, and plumbing. And we internally also looked at the structural elements. So starting with the structural, it is, as you say, it has good bones. There are some needs in the roof space, a little bit of tuck point recommendation going on. And then overall, some abatement will need to happen. As Elise mentioned, nature's moved in a little bit. So there's some known mold remediation that needs to happen, asbestos remediation, and from our testing, there were no concerns with lead, actually, so that was some good news there. And then moving on to sort of the mechanicals, you know, as we mentioned, there's 40-year difference between the two halves of the building. There's a hodgepodge of kind of retrofits to a lot of the mechanical systems, some of them being from, well, just obsolete generations of equipment to really on their last legs in general. So there is, and I believe at least the reports are going to be provided or are in the packet.
They are in the packet,
Okay.
the phase 1 environmental that we had to resend to each other. The full
Yeah.
appendix will be added to the packet afterwards. It was an additional 400 pages that's not included in the packet tonight.
So we'll spare you and give you the highlights here. So as I mentioned, structurally the rooftop has some work that needs to be done, and then some of the mechanical elements on top will also need that. The good news is there are a lot of pieces of equipment that could be repurposed. There's some mini splits that are expected to, I mean, as it stands right now, there's no power or water to the site, but from all inspections, they look functional. The new carrier rooftop unit is perfectly fine. So those are kind of big ticket items, but there are still some specific HVAC needs to kind of bring it up to code and functioning. Next slide. Moving on to electrical, again, kind of a common theme here. There's a mismatch of different generations of technology. A lot of 1970s era electrical, but actually in good shape. Just a little bit harder to modernize and retrofit from there. There is a emergency generator that needs to be replaced and brought outside. But sort of the good news here is that there's a general consensus from the 1901 electrical team that it is a quote-unquote easy retrofit for a lot of the critical electrical needs. And there's plenty of power that serves the site today. There were a few concerns with the emergency, the fire systems. Those will need to be replaced and brought up to codes. They are well outdated at this point. Next slide. And then plumbing, the site is served well by existing utilities. The water heater and softeners are going to be needing replacement. I believe there's some history behind the boiler itself as well, and need some upgrades to the sump system. And just overall, to again bring it up to ADA compliance, for instance, there will need to be a few retrofits throughout the building. And the last thing was, I guess, alongside the ADA compliance, there's other just modern building codes that would need to be addressed with any kind of rehab of the building itself. Okay. One thing that was highlighted by the 1901 team is there are sort of some lacking IT systems. So providing proper networking through the building, especially depending on what its future use is, that could be a challenge. And again, just highlighting that there are some remediation measures that are needed. And with the current building footprint and how it could potentially be repurposed, there is limited viability for creating enough residential space for it to kind of pencil out based on kind of a real estate evaluation. So it would maybe be a balance of attracting some residents and commercial users, potentially some community space within the existing building if it were to be kept. I'm not trying to ignore this side of the room. Next, go ahead. So what we'll present to you today are going to be 3 different options, and they kind of start at the low impact option, which is going to be concept A here, and they will progress in sort of how impactful they are, how much, I guess the degree of change that you would see at the site. So we'll kind of end at a full raise and a whole new site look. So concept A is an adaptive reuse. You keep the whole footprint, the 1940s and the 1980s addition. And for all 3 of these options, I do want to mention that they are all in consideration paired with expansion and improvements to the Triangle Park. And that will be a common theme, but the focus really for the RFP right now, and you can maybe expand on this a little bit at least, but the RFP will be structured towards the building site itself, understanding that there needs to be accommodations for, I guess, flexible planning for the future park improvements. I don't know if you want to add any kind of details to that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it more when we have our discussion questions towards the end, but just keep in mind, obviously, we're not making any decisions tonight. We're not choosing between A, B, or C. These are really kind of extremes for discussion, just to show you what things could look like. And as we get to the discussion questions, we'll kind of just keep in the back of your mind what things you think are you would be open to seeing in an RFP response, and what things do you think are totally off the table or would be hard to swallow for the community.
And then I did want to I led with sort of the parking count, so I do want to make sure that we highlight that. So with this particular option, this would reduce the on-site parking stalls by 22. Next slide. So concept B is a small adjustment to concept A. It effectively removes the 1980s addition to the building, and the thought there is you have a balance for the parking, if that is sort of a priority in consideration, and it kind of opens the door for down the line any kind of expansion or redevelopment of the adjacent fire station site. So it allows a community function space within the 1940s structure, sort of with a long-range planning option, not necessarily a requirement, but the option to use the parking lot space as a future consideration with any possible redevelopment of the neighboring fire station site. Again, still expanding and renovating Triangle Park. There is a small reduction in on-site parking, which is sort of traded for just improved circulation and that expanded space within the park itself. Next slide. And then finally, Concept C is a full tear down and repurpose. The circulation on the site looks very similar to Concept B, except no surface level parking in the north half there. The idea here would be about a 3-story residential structure with potential for a rooftop patio that could overlook the park space, but try to be self-contained with residential parking on the ground level. So this would have, I mean, there could be some discussion about how that particular residential structure is accessed, but the idea would be that the ground level has roughly 34 internal stalls, which you see there at the bottom of the bullet point list. So there's a net decrease of 26 public parking stalls, but there are 34 within the building footprint itself for the folks who live there. The ideal, sort of the target unit count for what the real estate market is at right now would be about 40 residential units, and that can swing depending on the blend that is desired, but that's just a good number to keep in mind as you kind of consider this particular option.
Did you mention the structured parking? Yeah, ground level.
Yes, yeah. And then we didn't want to propose just tearing down a historic building and not thinking about it at all after the fact. So we did talk about how we could build into the RFP some requirements to pay homage to the previous structure, and that could be sort of maintaining some of the facade, reincorporating some of the old materials into the building itself that replaces it, or something like a concession stand in the park. So not letting it be forgotten would be kind of something that we could incorporate into the RFP as sort of a requirement. Next slide. So just to put this in perspective and take a picture from what the Tin Man would see with that particular redevelopment, just wanted to put it into context what that 3 stories might look like. Provide a little bit of transparency so you can see how that rooftop sort of relates to the fire station behind it, for instance, and the surrounding buildings and businesses. Next slide. So just to kind of provide a few visual representations of something that could be incorporated in. The next couple slides are just sort of a materials board for consideration of aesthetic requirements that could be dictated in the RFP or just generally pursued. You can kind of just shuffle through these a little bit, you know, creating some community spaces for play for the kids. If they're not interested in a concert at the band shell, for instance, kind of work that in. Some lighting in that area for a rooftop patio, food trucks, things of that nature. Next slide.
All right. So we can certainly flip back to any of those concepts and report pages if you want to take a closer look at them. But really the rest of our time together tonight we wanted to devote to discussion and if we're ready, some potential direction to give to Martin and I as we start to draft this RFP, and then would bring it back in front of both bodies for review and discussion before we would publish it, of course. So, as I mentioned before, I think we should talk about, are there any options that are completely off the table that you think would be not acceptable to the community? Or again, a change that would be pretty hard to swallow? What are we open to considering? We want to leave the door wide open, or are there things that, again, should be off the table? What are our goals here with redevelopment? So what do we want them to know about the village, but also for this project? What are kind of our big objectives? So I think we can start with those, and then if we make some progress on that, we can maybe move to some more of the details about what specific information we'd want to see from respondents in an RFP, but let's just start here.
Well, the idea is that what we want to do is start the discussion. We're not going to make a decision tonight, because obviously this is all just coming before us. But give some direction to staff and to JSD as to what we really want to do. And that's basically what started out with, is like I said, are there any options that are off the table? And just have a discussion. We don't know for sure, but get to that point. So anybody want to start? Have any thoughts on it?
Greg, I guess one other thing I wanted to
Sure.
add is just, obviously an option like option C is a big swing from, I think, where some people sort of had this
Right.
redevelopment going in their mind. From the downtown master plan, it certainly wasn't 100% of the respondents, but I would say, 2/3 or more said, if there's a possibility to save Old Village Hall in some way, shape, or form, that would be great. It's an important part of our history. And I think we all went into this just, again, wanting to understand what we really have left with Old Village Hall. And just having a better understanding of that, I think the realities of the reuse challenges here, I think we should just go in with our eyes wide open, knowing that if that's an option we want to consider or require to keep, all or part of the building, that, there might be a very low cost as far as a land sale. It might be $1 sale type thing to get the building off of our hands. There might be a TIF request for some of the
Well, the idea.
redevelopment work that needs to happen. So, just kind of looking at and that's part of your all's scope. The next steps is to look at, depending on what scenarios we want to look at further or continue to entertain, looking at some, potential taxable revenue.
Well, the idea, I think, is, again, with the RFP, that we want to open it up a little bit, but have some guidelines as to what we're looking for. So you've got, essentially, there were 3 options offered to us. And maybe we want to consider all of those. And it's kind of what you do and what you don't want. We're going to walk through all of this tonight. And it's going to come back again, I suspect. It's going to be more than one more meeting, more than likely. So, but that's just to get it started going, how you all think about this. If you've heard anything from the community, which I don't think the community has known much about this at this point. I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, other than we did mail out for this meeting,
Right.
folks within, I think, 500 feet of the downtown parcel to invite them to come and check out the meeting. Again, all the slides will be available for folks afterwards too, so we can certainly make sure that people are able to access this.
Village board, anybody in the village board? Sure, yes, sir. Matt.
Sorry, with the survey, you said 500 feet around the parcel, is that right?
That was, we sent a letter for tonight's meeting to let them know that this was gonna be discussed tonight.
I see.
Back in 2024, when we were doing the downtown master plan, that essential same group of people, we did a focus group with downtown business owners in that same radius. We did a couple focus groups and walking tours with downtown residents, and then we did some wider community surveys, outreach at different events, concerts, things like that too. So there was, various questions from what do you love about downtown to, specific questions about Village Hall. I think we more kind of focused on that type of specific question with the downtown residents and business owners. So
Oh, that's amazing. I'm just wondering, of the 2/3 that wanted to maintain some sort of Village Hall presence, right? How many people, right? Like, so was it 10? Was it 1,000?
Yeah.
2,000?
I mean, of the like downtown groups, I mean, probably a couple of dozen in that, like, in those focus groups, people that we actually heard from. Obviously, a lot more people were invited to attend, but yeah, overall, we got probably, 500 to 600 people's responses across all engagement for the downtown plan, but some people just were not specifically asked about Village Hall.
And one follow-up, and Was that across the village or just downtown?
Both. Yeah. So there was a wider community survey, and then again booths at art fair and Sounds of Summer concerts and things like that. So those were more questions about what do you like about downtown, what's missing, what would draw you to spend more time here, and then those focus groups that are more the downtown residents and business owners. We actually walked around to different spots downtown and talked about. We stared in front of Village Hall or the intersection and talked about challenges and opportunities for each different site. So
Great, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question about what we think the feasibility, and I'm sure there's no experts in the room that can really have a crystal ball and tell us this, but I'm looking at this rendering in front of me, and it's a primarily residential building, and it's also in a space that's right next to a fire department and a downtown space. I wonder, obviously housing is a need in Dane County, we understand that, but is this something that we think will fill and stay full if, in its current location for just purely residential? Do we have any indication?
yeah, well, obviously like Jefferson Crossing, that was sort of the first redevelopment and addition of multifamily downtown. I think there was a lot of skepticism about what that would look like and how that would impact downtown. And as far as I know, there's a waiting list, or those,
Okay.
Those fill up pretty quickly. There are a lot of locations where there are apartments, like Madison, for example. There's apartments above fire stations, and it's just sort of part of the excitement, I guess, of living there. But there's a lot of amenities that I think maybe people would be, again, we don't know the long-term future of that fire station and everything too, but I think there's a lot of amenities that people like to be near and are already living near downtown, that being right next to the fire station, there's already people that are kind of living in this area anyway, and it's not a common, I guess, like complaint that we hear that,
Okay.
oh, they're running, sirens all the time. I think typically they actually start their sirens when they get out closer to like Janesville Street,
Great.
too. But yeah, all we can really look at is the market, how quickly other buildings fill up, but that there's a demand for people living downtown as we're adding more businesses and, hopefully a more programmable, usable space for Triangle Park too, with amenities that people can use when there's not scheduled events going on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I would say, our goal for this space would be something that would draw more people to downtown. And the thing that most attracted my imagination was the idea of a rooftop amenity, especially if that was available, not just to the residents of the building, but to anybody who might want to come downtown. The two concerns I have are, number one, I think all of these options reduce parking, and parking's already pretty tight downtown, especially, certain times and days. And the other thing is, we know the fire department needs more space. We also know that the fire department best serves the district by staying roughly where it's at. And so we're looking at options to expand for the fire department. And so I would at least keep that on the table as a possibility.
Okay, thanks. Keeping in mind, though, again, that we're gonna have some more parking with the development of the senior center.
True.
Granted, it's a half a block away or something, but we have, Park Street's being redone, and we're gonna have a very nice parking lot at the senior center, which then obviously will be more available, let's say, in the evenings when we have more stuff downtown. So keep in mind that is also, we're not just necessarily losing parking, but it's gonna be shifted a little bit.
Good point.
Thanks, Tim. You got anything, Phil?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris, a question for you. Regarding the 40 unit minimum, can you, I wonder where that comes from. I know that's probably not your area of expertise, but is it unheard of to build half that size, or?
So I guess that's not my area of expertise,
Right,
but it is part of our scope we have a partner who does real estate analysis, and that's kind of our next phase, is really taking the feedback here and then going that extra step with the real estate analysis and appraisal process. But that was sort of the initial count we got from our real estate consultant. Just what they're seeing in the market right now for what developers have an appetite for and how what it needs to be for it to pencil out.
Sure,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I would just add, if you think about all the infrastructure that's needed for a multi-story building, elevator,
Sure.
sprinklers, things like that.
Right.
A lot of that costs just as much, whether you have, 20 units or 40 units. Obviously,
Right.
if you have more units, then you can pay off some of those costs a lot sooner, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's consistent with a lot of the multifamily too. We haven't really seen a building, at least in my 6 years here, that a multifamily building that's less than 45 maybe, per building. Trying to remember. So.
Thank you both.
Plan Commission.
I
Anything?
got a question that's more global.
Okay.
What is the intention of this report? And I don't mean to sound flip on that. What I'm asking is the intention of this report to create the foundation for another report that gets sent out to developers? Or is the intention of this report to go out to developers to come back with prospective projects?
Yeah, I can take a whack at that.
Yeah.
So I think the appendices, all of the reports, the phase 1 environmental and the mold inspection, all of that will be added to the RFP. This slide deck, I think that's up to us how much we want to include. This is really more for our purpose. This is to get feedback from you all as to what we do or don't want to see within the RFP. I think it's sort of up to all of you to decide how we want to steer the ship. If we want to say, here's some ideas to kind of get your wheels turning about concepts that we are open to. This is what they could potentially look like, knowing that you need to bring your own project that would have its own, site planning process and things like that. But is that kind of what you're asking? I guess
Well,
how
kinda.
we want to kind of
Because
steer people's thoughts
I guess
here.
I look at this as, if I were a developer and I got this package, is there the right information in it? And my answer is no. There is a lot that's missing. If I'm a developer and I'm looking at this, foundational questions aren't being asked or aren't being answered. It's good stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff like services, sprinklers, water, electrical, mechanicals, what can be saved, what can't. Those are things that are sort of described generically. My gut tells me that the mechanicals aren't even worth saving. They're just a scrap. And if that's the case, fine. But what about the boiler? Can the boiler even be removed?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
Have you looked
So-
at
I'm getting into the weeds, and
I
I
know,
get
that.
it.
And again, I believe that this report, and it's very detailed, and again, we have more information that's available that we don't have in this packet. But I believe that what's done here is that putting enough information together so that if we go out for an RFP, it allows us to make an RFP that is somewhat detailed as to what we're looking for, guide people. But there's enough information here that they don't have all kinds of questions about the building and stuff.
Which is why I was asking.
Right, I believe if we go, and I didn't read the whole thing, I'll be honest with you. I paged through everything, I looked through everything, there's a very detailed, mechanical, electrical, a very detailed structural. It's all there. Now, again, what happens is a contractor or whoever has to do this, they're gonna wanna come back and look at the building and look at the options that they have available, whether they wanna do one of the 3 options we have. And we don't know if that's for sure what we're going out with yet, but we think we are. But this allows us the discussion tonight, and this report allows us to come up with an RFP that at least gives somebody enough information to put together whatever they wanna do for a proposal. We may get a whole range of things, but, that's kinda where we're going with that. Makes sense?
It does. And-
Okay,
And
all right.
thank you for that. But to finish my thought then, where are the water mains in the streets? How big are
that'll-
they?
yeah.
Those kinds of things. You do, like I said, you've got great information in here, but if I'm a developer, I'm gonna wanna know those kinds of things, because I'm not gonna save the mechanicals. It's just not worth it. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna save the electrical. It's not worth it. So what can I really save? Is one side of that project, the 1940 version of the 1980, got a better floor-to-floor height, more usable, more clear floor span than another? You know, that's what I'm looking at if I'm a developer that's looking at this for an RFP. What is worth saving, what's not?
And that, again, I'll go back, I believe, as having been a contractor, you have site visits and they need to come back in and evaluate that. I think what they've done, if you look, there's pretty good detail, again, on the mechanical, electrical. It tells you what's available, what's, you know, what should be replaced. And you're right, more than likely, there's maybe one air handler that can be used, but then again, by the time you get done fooling around with it, there's no warranty on it, You're probably better off something new.
But here, I think that's a good idea as far as, you know, just site utilities, that's information we have in our GIS system,
It's-
so
it's-
super easy to
There's some,
put
there's site
a map
utility
together.
stuff in here, there is
And
some,
then-
but well, we can also get more for the, you know, RFP. Unless there's more in this 400 pages that we haven't looked at yet, which could be, you know, the detail.
And then in my opinion, I'm not sure if I look at this as a developer, that I would want to have sort of cookie cutter approaches. Because for me, candidly, I'd be also looking at an option D, which is, can I save part of it and tear down and build new?
Oh, yeah?
Because that's really the most value potential right there, especially if you want to make a sales pitch to the village community about trying to save something. You know, that's sort of part of it. So I'm not sure that we would, I don't know if we would want to say, give them, here's your 4 options, here's your 5
I see.
options. I think that you kind of give developers the framework of what you want and let them decide and let the community decide based on that. That's my opinion. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we would want to be inflexible. I don't want to
no.
put words in Elise or Martin's mouth, but you know, we have 3 options, and as Elise said, part of this is to get the gears turning a bit. But I don't think we would want to restrict it to just 3 options. Even collectively in this room, you know, there are people out that would maybe be looking at this and have 7 or 8. So it's kind of, the end goal is to provide the framework for just providing at least a clear outline of what the village desires to see at the site and how a developer might go about accomplishing that goal. I guess you're not off based on the reports and all of that information, but to truly spare a few trees, the phase 1 ESA report itself is 500 and something pages. So that information is provided, and after review of that, if there's more that you want to make sure is included, there's ways we can certainly accommodate that. Yeah, so this report right now, the benefit is truly for this body to have this discussion and understand where we need to go with the kind of final push effort to reach that RFP stage, and really get this out to those developers, so that they can start looking at this. And you know, site visits are one thing. We did perform an ALTA survey for the site, which has detailed information about all on-site utilities, topography, all of that. So that would be provided to a developer as well. And then any supplemental GIS data that might be needed, that can also be provided.
And Phil, to answer your question, I just did a 20 unit slab on grade.
yeah.
And it's over half leased up, it's less than a month owned. But they're absolutely right in that if you put underground parking or surface parking on stilts, that's gonna double your cost, your ROI is gonna be 40 units at least, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that does highlight sort of the importance of parking. We heard over and over again that is a critical element to be considered here. So providing that to the folks that live there and then allowing that increased foot traffic for the downtown businesses was something we wanted to make sure we considered in one of these concepts.
I appreciate what you had to say, John, and it makes a lot of sense. I think, the elephant in the room is, are we gonna tear down the village hall? Do we wanna save the village hall? Do we wanna save part of the village hall? because I think if we want to go out for an RFP, we, you know, we can either say an option is to reuse the building, or another option is to tear the entire structure down. But if the decision makers here have said, no matter what, we're gonna save the building versus part of it versus none of it, we need to get that out of the way.
And that's where we're going with tonight to a certain extent. You know, there was three options shown there, okay?
Yes.
That really, and you made a point, that's not all the options. And I look at it, if you go for an RFP, give them the options of whatever they wanna do with the building. If we wanna keep it, we tell them we wanna keep it.
Yeah.
If we tell them that, well, we don't care about the 1980s edition or something like that, give them all the options they wanna do, and maybe they wanna use part of it. But let them decide what they wanna do with it. And we guide them through that, but again, we're not gonna try to limit them to the three options. That was just a starter here, of where we wanna go with it. Yes, Tom?
I guess I'd go back to some of the responses we got in relationship to the walking tours, and so that it was always that they wanted to preserve the historical element of it. You can do that in a lot of different ways. And maybe it's just a facade, maybe it's a relative element, but that would be an element within the RFP that when we're considering the different proposals, one of the elements is how much does this help preserve the historical character that everybody said was an important element. They also said at the same time, we want lots of parking, so there is a conflict. But
Well, there is, and again, like you said, there's a lot of things you can do. You have a shell, you could do anything you want with it, or just one wall of it like you were talking about or something. There's so many different things. Give them the option. But is there, again, getting back to when we start going through these three items we just talked about here, not the three options, is there anything that we don't want to give up? And we don't know, we don't have to decide that tonight. But is there some no-go things, or are we gonna leave it wide open for anything that somebody wants to do, or just try to get some discussion tonight that we can eventually get to a final RFP? Yes, ma'am. Yes, Lynn.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I don't wanna limit anybody, but I will say, like, my gut reaction when seeing the last option, which took away like the trees and some of the green spaces, and it didn't feel to me like that didn't feel like it fit. Again, it's just a box, right? Like, it is absolutely
That's
not
the-
what they're designing,
right,
but it's,
right.
my gut reaction was like, oh.
Well, take a look at the other two pictures that you had of not the box. There you go.
And the
guess-
landscaping in the park, right? It's just like a
Right.
big green rectangle. That would
Right.
be, and that's kind of a point. We're not going to talk really too much about Triangle Park and stuff
No.
tonight, but that would be sort of a trade-off of, again, reaching some of those goals we have for Triangle Park, but there's the parking trade-off there too.
Yeah, I guess my reaction is more just like, it feels to me very far away from what the original building is. And to your point, like, I understand giving them the direction that we want it to look or feel very similar, but if you're gonna put parking underground and you're gonna put 40 units, like, it's gonna look really different than the original building. And so I don't wanna confuse a developer by saying, like, this 2-story building that's really old, we want it to look, we want your modern 40-unit building to look just like this, because I just don't know that is ever going to be achieved.
And we won't be very far underground with parking.
It's called Spring Street.
It's called
For a
Spring Street
reason.
for a reason, yes. yeah.
Kayak.
Quick question, has there been any soft reach outs from any developers saying, like, it's been vacant for 3 years, right? You guys are doing surveys, people obviously get wind, they're around town, so, like, is there anybody that's kind of softly interested, in their ideas coming from developers? Because there's 3 options here, there's probably 100 options, right? So, does anybody else have an idea? And I would argue that we should then present that to the village in a survey that's wide-ranging, so that we kind of really get a sense. So a couple questions and a comment.
Well, I'm sorry again on that, Matt. If you mean, we threw out 4 options, or 3 options, excuse me,
Right.
but that's not the only options.
Of course.
What I'm saying, what you're saying is that let the developer have some imagination
Sir.
and maybe utilize it, maybe they can't. Village Oregon, I've been here for quite a while, but folks that live here, that have been here for a while, really like the old stuff we have.
Sure.
And sometimes you gotta say goodbye to it. And, you know, so let it up there, just let them decide what they can do, and what's the best for the village, and of course, developers gonna come back with what they feel they can do most economically and still get the job and be profitable.
No, and to your point, sir, I think that's great. It's just, let's see the ideas and go from there, right? I mean,
Well, we're trying to, and I'm not sure how we should, again, have to get to a point here, at least get this discussion started. Does it all sound good to everybody? Is it what we're doing? And get this RFP down?
And I guess in answer to your question, I won't
Yeah.
name any names, but yes, there have been
Yeah.
groups that are local that we're familiar with that have inquired about the building and the site over the last, couple of months, couple of years, everything from, office uses, event space, redevelopment. So there's a lot of folks that I think are just waiting until we get to the point of, and say, when you get to that RFP, make sure you let me know, keeping their eye on our RFP page and all that, but.
I think I'd wanna see goals that we tell them, and it
Okay.
might say, maintain this many parking spots, and it might say, maintain the character of the building, it might say, what we want this space to be used for. I don't think that restricts anything, maybe it gives them an idea of how to present to the group that's gonna review the proposals, and
Yeah, you're right. But if you're going to, well, maintain as many parking stalls or provide as many as possible, you gotta be careful about whether we wanna guide them in a direction of residential or business, because years ago, we did that down here, and we had a number of developments in the village where we had the idea that we were gonna have, businesses on the lower level or the first level and at residential. None of those flew. It started out, using the word disaster is the wrong word, but it was not beneficial to the village. And
What was the issue? Why did those fail?
it was a wonderful concept back 20 years ago, when I was still around here, and it just didn't draw. They didn't draw businesses.
Okay.
That was the thing. It didn't draw the businesses. And perfect example is out on Wolf Street.
Wall Street, Elliott.
Yeah, Elliott, gentleman did a wonderful job building it, but it didn't turn out well for him, because now you drive by and you see all the individual gas meters, because it's all apartments or condos or whatever he's turned it into.
That's right, that was gonna be retail.
It was gonna be all retail on the lower level, right, and it just never took off.
Yeah.
And if you go up, and I'll tell you, go to some other municipalities, Dane County, north up towards Sauk, you drive through these municipalities and you will find that concept. And you'll find that that they didn't take off. The business did not take off, because it's hard to bring a business that's viable to a smaller community and make it work. Depends, there's a niche for everything, but not necessarily a lot.
How is Fitchburg doing with the development up by our elementary school up there? Because they have a lot of that there. Is that doing well? Do you know?
I don't know, but the thing is that when you go up there, they've got so much residential. You wanna believe that helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen in like the Terra Vista neighborhood, there's like, cocktail lounges and a salon and some smaller kind of neighborhood oriented businesses that I think there probably are still some vacancies, but I've seen there is, Eric, to your point, I don't know how many of you were around or have seen the RFP we put out when we were looking for reuse of the 249 North Main Street site where the North Point townhomes are now, but there were goals that we had about, preserving the historic trees. Trying to remember, Martin, what some of them were like, engaging or providing opportunities for people with low income or special populations, seniors, children. How well, is there a park element? Density, things like that. And then we had kind of a scoring matrix. So based on some things that we felt were important, how well did they meet those goals? And obviously there were a lot of different types of responses from that. So some swung kind of one way on, density and had less green space. Others were more green space. So if we could identify maybe some, and maybe that's not tonight, but some metrics of, where we wanna try to, minimize parking loss, or we wanna, it's hard to kind of tie some of that parking though, because the public, we're gonna retain probably, a fair bit of that site with the parking lot and Triangle Park too, so how much do we wanna, I guess, put that on the developer versus what do we just
Well, if you
make
give
as a
them that
decision for
whole-
our space?
Yeah, if you give them that whole space that was outlined in yellow, then what are they gonna use it for? And
Well-
so if you don't tell them that part of this needs to be for public parking, and it's not your cost, or it's not your part of the development, but we need to keep some space here, or the
Yeah.
park needs to be this size, like,
Well, I don't believe the idea here is to, I think, essentially look at the footprint of the existing old
Yeah,
village
I think
hall.
we would suggest we
That's-
would carve out, like, do a CSM and carve out the portion of the site, like the footprint of the building, plus or minus some square footage.
Well, the idea of Triangle Park is not to be part of it. That's not to be part of it.
Right, that would be our
That's the villages.
forever kept in the
Right,
village.
so that's, but the only thing is there is some concepts there that they want to maybe put some more green space in, so you're going to lose a little bit of parking. That's where the issue is about Triangle Park.
That part struck me, all three concepts had a parking count, but all of those parking counts were in the assumption of more green space for the park, and that kind of is a separate
Again, that's.
separate project,
that's a
separate
separate project,
discussion. I mean,
yes,
those parking
completely,
stalls
completely.
maybe stay.
Exactly. The redevelopment of the park would probably come after
Right.
what happens here. And those decisions can be made after this is redeveloped, and taking into consideration of what's put there may affect how we decide what to do there. But I wouldn't want us to think, well, we don't want to do this because it's going to affect the park. It's,
Yeah, I think in a way,
I
we
think-
kind of wanted to show like a, not worst case scenario, but like a maximum build out of maybe what green space could look like over there if we expanded that, and then what impact would that have on parking? Obviously, that could be adjusted in a lot of different ways.
I would suggest we kind of like, just set that aside, Triangle Park, and not be concerned about it, because we got Triangle Park, it's there, it will not be part of this RFP.
Right.
And then we'll decide later if in fact we can do something else, and again, address parking, whatever we have to do,
Right, yeah, but just.
depending upon what's gonna happen in this place.
exactly.
That said, it seems fairly obvious to me, and kind of what you led with, is the current building does not really redevelop well for residential.
No.
So if we want residential in that block, I think we need to offer it up as a tear down site, and we get the
But again,
3-story, 4-story, whatever. If we would like to see a business on that site, I think we need to offer them more details about the building, dimensions and plans
Well-
and bearing walls and spans and things that John was talking about.
I don't think we want to, but do we want to get to that point as the village? I don't think we do.
No,
I think what we want to do is we want to find somebody that would love to buy this property, or however they or get to it and get ownership of it, and let them provide to us a proposal of what they want to do for development. We can say yes or no.
If we give them a few more details, they can give
Well,
us a much
I agree with you,
faster
but that,
rendition of what they are proposing to put there.
but that goes back again, as I envision it. I'm envisioning one way, that is that if you give them the option that they can use the building, all of it, part of it, whatever they want to do with it. Residential, business, that is the developer's concern, and then they come back to us and provide what they want to propose.
And then we're gonna be sitting here comparing apples to oranges to grapes to
Depends,
watermelons some
depends,
night.
well, we may, I would hope not. Again, we don't have the RFP, again, we're not deciding tonight. Let's get to that point, and we can't do a lot of what-ifs, we gotta start narrowing it down a little bit.
I think we can make a decision, do we see that block as viable and necessary for residential, or would we like to keep business there? I look at what the condition of the red brick building was 20-some odd years ago, and the job that Gorman did with
Yes,
that, and
yes.
what that has brought to that end of this block, and is something like that viable down here without knocking it down and going to 3 or 4 stories of apartments?
Well, Go ahead.
I think that what we want to do, my opinion, is not give them any options whatsoever. I think what we want to do is we want to give them, we are looking at generic terms. We are looking at infill for a downtown location that could incorporate things such as residential, commercial, non-drive-through. We are looking to maintain 25% green space and the creation of a park that has X number of square feet. And where I'm going with that is, I think the best use of this site is to take that building and not put it there at all, but put it up against the street. Parking is rectilinear. Use the rectilinear portion of your site for your parking and use the funky shape as your building. It will create more interest in the streetscape, it will create more interest in your building, and it will force them to sort of tie into the architecture of the neighborhood. That's just my gut, that's where I would go. And-
Just to clarify, which street are you saying you
So
need to hug it to?
You see the green
Janesville?
space?
Yeah.
That's where I wanna put a building.
Right there?
That's damn
That's
right I
Triangle.
do.
No, that's Triangle
No,
Park.
what
Oh,
you do is you tell the people that you want to maintain X number of square feet around that. So if that's where you're gonna have, that's what your area is for your park right now, it doesn't have to be there. It could be along where the front of Village Hall is right now.
No.
There's nothing that says that it needs to be along there. Is that the highest and best use and best interest of this downtown area? No.
But now you're getting involved with Triangle Park, which again, we didn't want to use part of that as the,
Well, but,
I am 100% in agreement with John. I'm sitting here thinking, why are we taking Triangle Park and setting it as a no-touch zone?
okay.
I think you let a developer, give them a clean slate. Say, here's what we have, these are the assets we have. What can you do with it? Let them pencil the numbers out, see what works. But from the fabric of the downtown, I want to back up a second. What was missing in your report was any discussion about the historic nature of the current Village Hall, the past Village Hall. I didn't see a lot of information, but it stood out to me when you said we have a historic building.
It's not historic.
Is that building on the state or national register?
It is not.
I don't believe it is, right? So it's charming, and it could be useful. Looking at all three of your options, the last one, the box, wasn't very appealing. The fabric of the downtown needs to be maintained. We have one of the best downtowns in Dane County because of the historic nature of the buildings. What John is saying is we are creating that space, that central plaza space around these facades of the building. By bringing it up to the road, you are going to have more of a built-in area. And I think it's going to be more successful. And then take your green space and put it near the fire station where it's quieter, where people aren't listening to a concert with cars buzzing by.
Okay.
So I like that idea, saying, give them some parameters. We want X percentage of green space, but leave it as open-ended as possible and see what the private sector comes up with, rather than us sitting here saying it should be residential, it should be business. That was the mistake that was done 20 years ago where we wanted business,
Yeah.
but the market wasn't there for it.
The only thing is, when you do that, I don't think we want that park to be part of their development.
No, the park will be deeded back to the village, but let them determine what is the best sort of orientation for
Okay.
that piece of
And
green
but
space.
somewhere along the line, we gotta give them some idea of what we want, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I understand, that's not a bad idea. Phil?
I agree 100%. But the only way I see that working is you take down the Village Hall, turn that into the new park and Park-E. Is that what your vision is?
I'm not gonna say that.
Okay.
Because
Well, I can.
You're right.
I can't, because
Yeah.
I think that, for example, to what Patrick just said, if Gorman comes in and says, we have a history of doing this and doing it well.
Yeah, they do.
And we're gonna convert this existing building into 14 units and we can make the numbers crunch, good for you.
Yeah.
If they need to tear the building down, Fred's contracting company needs to come in and tear the building down, put the building on stilts, put 40 units above it to make the numbers crunch, good for you. I don't want to say I think that, again, what we want to do is give them generic properties. We are looking at infill. We are looking at something that has a aesthetic that matches the neighboring area. You know, we are looking at possible mixed-use developments if you want to do that. Whatever. You know, maybe they've got Panasonic wants to come in and they're looking for a corporate headquarters, and they're going to put in a 3-story building right there.
They're still in business.
They are now.
You're aging yourself,
Yeah.
Matt.
Sorry.
No, it's fair. It's totally fair. I mean, my
Yeah, no,
point
it
is,
is.
if
It is.
there's a developer that has somebody on the hook that is looking for a.
You're right,
Yes,
you're right.
right.
I'm not gonna tell them that they can't put an office building here. That'd be a good use.
Well, you guys, you open up, that's why this discussion's good, because the two of you come up with a great idea that is possible. Go ahead.
I'm gonna mark my agreement down to 90% because I really embrace the idea of putting the building along the street.
Yeah.
And then moving the park over to where the
Yeah.
village hall is.
Yeah.
I just wanna make that.
So I'm just gonna come back to you on the village hall and say, don't say it has to be taken down,
No,
because some developer
no.
might wanna use that shell. They might
That's
wanna
right.
create an atrium, and it could be
That's right.
very exciting.
Yeah.
And just to the north, and I'm not talking the addition to the village hall, that can go, because that's a subterranean nightmare,
Sure.
right? But the old village hall might have use, let the developer decide that.
So, Chris,
What?
question for you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Chris,
That's
quick-
all right.
just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
How difficult is it gonna be to put an RFP together like that? You know,
In a
that's-
way, I think more flexibility can be
It might be.
easier,
It
right?
might
because
be.
we're not saying, here's your choices
right.
and you have to fit within one of these
Yeah, you're
boxes.
right.
I think,
You're right.
obviously, you know,
You're just giving them food.
yeah, exactly.
Get
We,
us
we
on.
don't know what we're gonna get back. One thing I'll say, just in tying back to the community feedback from the downtown plan, obviously Triangle Park was another site that was talked about a lot. Just for what it's worth, you know, historically, from the original Sandburn maps and things of the villages, that has always been a public green space. Obviously, now there's more parking than there used to be, but that area has been historically public green. I think there's a lot of attachment to that band shell
There
too.
is.
Not to say that it couldn't be relocated or reused. We even talked about that in the downtown plan, and I think there was an option that redevelopment resources showed where they even took the band shell and flipped it towards closer to the intersection and kind of had people facing west rather than east. But I know that was just a point of discussion. People feel really strongly about where Triangle Park is, keeping the band shell. So that would be something else, again, without knowing what somebody would come back with, it's hard to say would we accept that or not. But that was definitely a lot of discussions about Triangle Park at that time too.
Tim?
I was gonna say something along those same lines, is that if we make the decision to do this, and I do support it, because I always wondered why we wanted to listen to concerts with cars driving by. And I would much prefer something that was a little more away from the traffic. But I think we're gonna have to think very carefully about the communication to the community
Yeah.
about what our plans are and the timing of how stuff gets laid out. Because I can just see a lot of people being up in arms about, they took down Triangle Park, you know, what's wrong with these people?
Right.
And so I think that's gonna be something we're gonna have to think through very carefully and
Okay.
communicate very carefully.
Tom?
Well, I think what we're getting down to is that there's some points in the RFP that would be, you can develop this whole area, but in it, you have to maintain a public band shell, music venue, park, something, somewhere within this, in the downtown area to continue to draw people to the downtown. Parking isn't, you know, what's our criteria that we're gonna judge against? You're gonna build a matrix out of this to judge, just like we did on the Main Street property. So these are, you know, we give them the freedom to consider putting the building wherever they like. But then they also have to give some space to where will there be a park, where will be a venue that draws people to the area. And those are just becomes your criteria in your matrix.
And again, that has to do with nothing more than your planning of your construction. You know, because you may, and I don't know, financially, however you look at it, but if, let's just say, just for giggles here, if you just move and you want to reuse Triangle Park for the new building, okay? Well, then take down the old building, get your development so you can have your concerts or whatever, so we don't interfere with whatever we do in our village and the enjoyment we have in the summers, and everybody that's to do that. Get that accomplished, and then they can go proceed with the other part of it, and that's a good idea, so, yeah. Again, this is actually getting more exciting as we talk about it, so.
Yeah.
It really is.
The other thing that I would throw out is that possibly the band shell could be incorporated as a developer's option
Yep.
as a public-private entity. And what that would enable them to do is use that for a profit source for them to offset some of their costs. But it could also then be something that could be reshaped and incorporated into the architecture to better solidify an orientation within the downtown area. You know, to your point, if you go to a concert at Breeze Stevens Stadium, that's sort of a public-private entity in Madison that has all of a sudden become incredibly
Yes.
energized. And you see people on the balconies around those units watching concerts all the time. And you've got the soccer games that go on, and it is an exciting, I don't even like soccer, it's exciting to be there. So that's the kind of thing that we could use as an energy source for this kind of development, I think, if you allow a developer to do that.
It's a soccer town.
John, I think you've
I
had,
know. Take a look at me, I'm not built for speed.
John, I think you've had great points, honestly. And one question I do have though is this fait accompli as this keeps going? Because the roof is leaking, there's water in there, there's mold everywhere. Like, does it just become a knockdown at some point, just based on the amount of time it's taken us to figure it out?
Well,
I don't know.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, I just don't know.
Okay, no, you got a good point. So maybe tonight we talk about, is there any option, opposition to that, raising that building? Is there an opposition to it? Is there somebody that says, no, absolutely not, we cannot let that building go? Is that something we can talk about tonight?
I'll just
Or-
weigh in real quick on that. You know, history is important, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's a building. That building could be spread around the village. It's downtown right now, which is the heart of the village. However, why don't we expand the history of the village with the village too? You know, and have monuments all over with the facade or any other idea you
No,
can think
it's
of,
a good
right?
idea.
So
It's an
I
option.
just throw that out there, but that's it.
Thank you. Good idea, Matt.
Chris, what do you think as far as what you've heard from your sub-consultants? Like, is there a certain point where like the roof has 5 more years and it's gonna cave in, or things aren't gonna get any better, right?
Right. No, I think as we mentioned, like structurally, it's in good condition. As with any property, you know, its roof has seen its functional use and needs to be addressed. And one thing I want to make sure is not lost, Scott. This will be a feat in itself, but there are building plans. We'll have to figure out how to scan those, maybe, because they are
Fragile.
print only and fragile. So I did want to make sure we didn't lose sight of that discussion topic. But yeah, the roof just flat out, it needs to be replaced. If there's going to be any reuse of the building, there's some work to be done on the roof. You're already going to be looking at a lot of the mechanicals that are up there and those penetrations. So you're probably punching through the roof to put in more modernized systems to begin with. So I think that is, I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion, but certainly maybe a big ticket item for reusing that space. Yeah, and then again, even though there is aged equipment in there, yes, maybe it is just easiest to consider it a full gut and kind of start with the skeleton. But I don't think there's going to be any sentimental value attached to the fire panel, but there are elements that could be salvaged. So yeah, I guess maybe the critical component is, if we're talking about and maybe historic building, that's a misnomer because that does technically carry its own connotation, but from the public viewing perspective, what they see as the historic nature of the building is really going to be the exterior. So if that is a particular element that needs to be
Well, yeah. How
preserved.
historic is it? 'Cause it's only 10 years older than me.
There you go.
When do I get
I feel like that's a trap, and I'm gonna let that one go.
It kind of turned out that way, didn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Let's reaffirm that.
Let's talk about that. Again, reaffirm that. Is there any opposition? Does anybody here on the village board or plan commission feel that there's absolutely no way we'll consider letting that building be torn down?
No.
I don't see anybody in opposition to that. So the idea that we all of a sudden, thank you, Patrick and John. That's a heck of an idea.
Yeah,
It is.
I'm on board with that.
How about you folks, village board? Now, again, I don't know how much more we have to go before we get to this RFP, because all of a sudden, I think maybe this changed it around quite a bit. Now, again, you're gonna give them an
Reframes it,
option, but
certainly.
we
It
gotta,
It opens up options.
it opens up options, yeah.
I think maybe if I could maybe repeat back some of the goals and things that I've heard.
Sure.
I think we have, made some good progress here. We can take a first crack
Take a
at
first step at it, yes.
the RFP, and again, kind of building that matrix like we talked about of these are our goals. Having some, I guess, an active use downtown and describe what that is, and we can kind of weigh what that might look like. Are there, some amount of historic preservation, whether it's of the building or elsewhere on the site? If that's a goal, we can state that. Aesthetics, matching the aesthetics of kind of downtown, or kind of honoring the history there. Do we want to have a mix of uses? Like John said, infill. We could have even criteria like what's the most creative use of the site, or what about like potential taxable value, or land use value? What would be a projected, value of your building? Whatever way, shape, or form you're proposing it. Is that something we want to ask people to try to, come up with a number, and we want
They're
to?
gonna come up with a design that's gonna be beneficial to them financially, and then it's workable to make it profitable. And we can say yes or no, but,
We could say,
they could utilize part of the structure, give them that option to use part of the structures, any way they want to. They don't have
What
to
are
leave it, maybe I'm wrong in that,
financial, opportunities. What are your resources? I think, in the past RFP too, we asked people about their, project experience. Have you done projects like this that have been successful? Who's your project team? Do you have the experience to do, a historic adaptation of a building, or downtown, small town, downtown redevelopment? Give us some examples that we can look up and
yeah. You're gonna
see
want
if you
them
have a
to,
track record.
yeah, you're gonna want them to look, I suspect, keep the look of the downtown we have somehow the best they can.
Yeah, and we have some language, I think, for the downtown
Right,
master
but
plan. It's not in the code, but.
This idea that's just been thrown out here gives us a wonderful opportunity to change the whole thing down there, to really make it much more of a bigger downtown. Or a interactive, what do you want to call it?
Yeah, I know that was one comment your team had when they were coming into Oregon for the first time. They said, coming down Jefferson, looking downtown, it looked like kind of a used car lot, because it was just the parking lot. Like, where's
Well,
this park that's
that's a
behind
good
all of
point.
that? Right?
It's a good point, and then it won't be
Right.
there.
Yeah, I know one thing redevelopment resources talked about was having like a feature, architectural feature, whether it's something that's got a tower or whatever, but like defining that downtown space a little bit more. Humans like to feel like they're enclosed, kind of in like outdoor rooms. It's a safer feeling. So
Take the
there's a lot of
atrium.
different ways that things could be laid out that would be, still comfortable and functional.
So at the point, to get this to some kind of a closure for tonight, it looks like we've opened this thing up a little bit. We've agreed, at least at this point, that there's no opposition to it. It has to be the existing structure can be removed. And we're gonna look at the entire parcel as opposed to just the footprint of the existing old village hall. That makes sense? Yes, Lynn?
I just have a quick question, for the refiguring of potentially having a developer use the triangle space. Are we then going to, is there going to be something in the RFP that says, like, if you decide to build on Triangle Park, you must then, and then is that on them to design in your mind? Like, when we did North Main, we took back that section, and then the village developed, or will develop that park based on what we might see from the neighborhood. I guess I'm wondering, like, is that what it looks like, where they, like, potentially tear down the space and they give us this empty space and say, okay, village, this is yours? Or do we also ask them to potentially pull together a plan for what that looks like?
Which then would, there's the other trick, it becomes our property then, again, correct?
Well, it's all our property right now.
I-
I mean,
well-
what happened with the North Point situation is not that we sold them the whole lot and they gave us back. We subdivided the property and we kept part of it.
Sure,
And then we
true.
sold them the north end. So there's a lot of different ways it could be set up with phasing and everything too, where we, maintain ownership until their new building is
Yeah.
built and then we sell it or whatever it might be.
Well,
So
it's a good point, Lynn,
Yeah.
what you're saying, what I was trying to say before is that if you do the depends how we did this and if it works out that way. And if the grand plan that John and Patrick talked about would work, we have to provide a facility, or space for, I would suspect, for the summer concerts. We would do that first, which would, if that's the case, probably go to the north, where the I-1980s edition is, and maybe part of the 1940s.
But-
That would be developed first. And that's just a thought, maybe
yeah,
not, but.
yeah, maybe
but-
without dictating all of the timing, maybe we could just
Right.
say in the RFP that, we want to maintain, like right now, it's what, 28% open space, maybe we say we don't want to go any lower than that
Okay.
or something, but that, and I think the alley, that's important, right, to businesses and maintaining flow, but within this other envelope, we want to, you can redevelop anywhere within that, but we need to have at least, 25 or 30% green
Gives them a
space,
lot
and
more-
show us how you would achieve that in your.
Gives them a lot more area to develop, too.
Regarding the alleys, you've got cross-access agreements, you're gonna have to be maintaining those as rights of privilege. The other thing is, I would, if it were me, I would write it as we were looking for 28% green space plus or minus 2%. And what that then would allow the developer to do is either create a green space that he could deed or leave back as part of the village land, or he could encompass that into a tax base that he could then also use as part of his quasi-public-private entity,
Okay.
in which the village could use that land for free, he could deed it that way. Or he could use it as a, Rolling Stone antiquated, short concert tour, I don't know, whatever.
For the Panasonic
Yeah.
staff.
for the Panasonic microphones,
All back in
corded
the past.
microphones. Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is we can keep the 28% in the guidelines.
So show us what you would do, but minimum, whatever,
We wanna keep
25,
that.
28%
Great.
green space, wherever that is. And I think too, like maintaining traffic flow and that alley access and stuff, those would also be.
I'd say that it has to be contiguous. Because if you don't make it contiguous, they could give you 12% here and 12% there, or they could even
Parking
start to
lot
play the
islands,
developer
right.
game and say, oh, my roof is green.
Yeah, okay.
So, not that I've heard of those stories. So,
And again, we're just the first kick at it right now. But, yeah, that's all stuff that can be ironed out as we go through this. And I don't know, timeline, I think we're trying to get it going, but,
I think, by the end of the summer
yes.
or so, start of the fall, if we get the RFP out on the street by then, but,
So the village board can keep the first Thursday of every month open for possible.
hopefully not too many more of these, but yeah, I think
Yeah, we'll see.
do you guys, how much more discussion you wanna have tonight, but I think we have a lot of good feedback and we
think
can,
we're
we can
far
take a
enough
first
with
whack
this?
at it.
We're good?
Um,
Okay, Tom, did you have something else you want to say?
No, I'm just, it's really, some of your goals are already defined in the downtown plan. So you can pull some of those and say, you know, some of these are goals for this area that we have, and you can build that into your RFP. It's like, we want to see, is there going to be more, when we judge your proposal, we're going to look, will it have adequate entertainment options? Does it have enough parking? You make those judgments between two different proposals. This one gives me 12 parking spots, this one gives me 20. Oh, he gets a higher score. So it's just make sure we get through all those goals defined as we put that proposal together. So, but you've got some of that already in the downtown
Yeah,
plan.
that's a really good point.
Good. We're good.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's see. I will, as our business is concluded without objection, the village board is adjourned.
Just the board.
Just the board. And you're all,
Don't keep it too long.
you're all, yeah, and you're all welcome to stick around and watch the rest of the exciting part here, because there's one item, so. Well, that's just, they settle down here. So I'm not gonna be there.
Yeah, that's right, he does have.
It's not related to tonight.
Okay.
It's related to last week.
Well, it doesn't matter, because you can say anything you want.
So you tell me when you're ready.
I'll be telling you in a minute when we're ready.
Turn the heat up.
Well, I'm always.
John, one thing we didn't talk about is where's the cannon gonna go if things get moved?
What's that?
The cannon, where's the cannon go? Does that have to stay part of the
You don't want
site?
me to tell you where that goes.
No, no.
How about your
It's gonna
front
stay
yard?
right where it is.
Yeah,
Right, pointing right down the street.
towards Stoughton.
Now, I'm just, anybody that enters the village is.
Yeah.
It's
It's a
entrance
warning.
beware.
Yeah. I like that.
Keeping an eye on Stoughton.
That's right. Well, we won't say anything about it. Okay. Now, okay, we're gonna move on then with the plan commission meeting. Next item, approval of minutes of April 9th, 2026. Do we have a motion to approve?
These were actually not included in the packet.
They're not-
We forgot to note that they were not available by the time of the packet printing, so
So you
they'll
put
be
it
in
on the
next.
agenda.
Yeah.
It was a long packet. We
So what we're
were,
gonna do is retract that my statement is what we're gonna do.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then. Public appearances. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the plan commission, including items both on and off the agenda. 15 minutes will be provided for this item with the 3-minute minute maximum per speaker. Otherwise, the agenda will proceed as posted. The remainder of the agenda items, the plan commission will not invite public comments. And there's no other public hearings, so, yes, sir, you can address this.
Distinguished guest.
Good evening. Tim Higgins, Prairie Grass Road, 109 Prairie Grass Road. I'd like to make a public comment regarding last month's planning commission and the conversation around adding owner-occupied requirement to our zoning code. And I would like to speak against that idea. For context, when I was 25 years old, I bought my first house. Nice little 3-bedroom, 2-car garage, end of a cul-de-sac. That was not unique when I was 25. My peers were all buying houses. 25-year-olds today are not buying houses, okay? The housing market is such that the deck is really stacked against them owning their own homes. And so they are forced into renting. If we then turn around and put in our zoning code that renters are less desirable as neighbors, I think we are doing a disservice to the community. You know, after the last meeting, I came up and talked to a couple of folks about the idea of corporate ownership of housing, which I see as a greater threat. And we kind of waved that off like, it's free commerce, you can't do anything about that. Well, to me, that's a pretty bad message to be sending to the young people today, that we can't help you with the systemic issues that are forcing you into being a renter, but we can shame you for being a renter. So I went home that night and I was a little frustrated, and I decided to Google, is there any objective evidence that suggests a renter is a less desirable neighbor than a homeowner? And what Gemini came back with was 45% of renters feel connected to their community, whereas 62% of homeowners do. I'm like, okay, but what's the cause and what's the effect? If we make people feel less welcome as renters, Why wouldn't they be less connected to their community? To me, a community is one where the people who are already here welcome the newcomers and tell them about things like the homecoming parade and the clean water and the highly rated fire department and cinnamon rolls at the Firefly on Fridays, and invite them to care for the community the same way we all do, and share that with them, not shaming them as renters. We're forcing people into renting situations, and I don't think owner-occupied belongs in any of our zoning codes. So I'd ask you to just give some thought to the belief systems that led to some of those opinions and take it under consideration.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? We'll move on then to new business. Review and possible approval of a site plan revision for Dream Kitchens, 150 Braun Road.
All right, I am Dream Kitchens tonight. I told them
Okay.
to not come and sit through the whole meeting, but Dream Kitchens is looking at a couple of upgrades. They've been in Oregon a really long time, and I think they're celebrating a milestone year. I think it's maybe 30 or 40 years here in Oregon, so wanting to do some upgrades to their warehouse. I did just receive a call a couple days ago from Chris Schmidt, who's the owner of Dream Kitchens, or I think manages this location at least, and he said that proposed concrete on the east side of the lot, closer to where Hacks used to be, kind of near where it says Lot 1 there, he has decided not to do that work this year, potentially next year, but just due to budget, he would just be interested in proceeding with the proposed concrete. There's a gravel area right now, and the dumpsters are kind of just out in the open. So I told him, if you're going to be doing any paving, we need to kind of bring this up, of course, to our current standards. So site plans are good for 2 years. So I did let him know that. I think we could, if you all are in support, still approve the site plan revision tonight, knowing that that eastern concrete area, it was going to be additional parking for some trailers, work trailers and things. That might not be built right away, but potentially next year as his funds and projects allow. But the paving of the gravel area to concrete on the west side along Market Street, and then the fencing of the dumpsters would happen this year. So that's my update, but otherwise meets all setback requirements, impervious area,
Okay.
all of the requirements of the GI zoning district.
Any questions, anybody?
Comment, I guess. I have no objection to what he wants to do. But I'm sorry he's not here tonight, because I wanted to ask him. He's proposing a wooden fence. I wanted to ask if he has plans to finish it or just let it weather naturally. I'm assuming he was gonna let it weather naturally. And that's fine. But none of the buildings around, all the buildings around there are steel panels. And so all I wanted to ask is, had he looked at any other materials? And if he goes one building to the south, to Lakeside Landscaping, and you look at the fence that they did, steel panel fence, it looks really nice. So wood fence, probably cheaper, probably easier, but I just wanted to kind of query, had he considered anything else that might be a little more appropriate for that area?
Sure, okay.
So you'll pass it on?
Yep, I can follow up with that. I did confirm the fence would be taller than the dumpsters too, so.
And the bottom line is it's gonna look better than it does now. So I have no hang up about using a wood fence, but I just think aesthetically, when you look at all of Market Street, it's all steel panels.
Thank you. Okay. Then we need, go
I
ahead.
have
John.
one quick question
Yep.
for the engineer types. I know that they're not disturbing an acre of land, but they're disturbing more than a half acre, especially with that area on the right, 25 by 110-ish, that's pushing a half an acre. So isn't there a trigger point for not having to do the full Monty with stormwater? But if you touch a half an acre, aren't you having to do like basic stuff? And I don't need to have the answer, it's just something to kind of keep an eye out from you guys, or?
Yeah, we looked at that.
So one kind of quirk of this is that gravel is considered impervious. So, yeah, I know, it's weird. But
It
when
is.
you're, yes,
So that's gravel
So-
right now.
it's gravel,
Got it.
yeah,
On the
converted
west
to
side.
concrete, yeah.
All right, never mind.
Yeah, but yeah, 20,000 square feet. If less than that is disturbed, then you don't get into all the stormwater voodoo, as you would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Need a motion to approve the revised site plan for Dream Kitchens, 150 Brown Road.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm gonna abstain from that vote since
Okay.
he wasn't here for me
All
to
right.
have that dialogue.
That's fine. Good idea. Thank you. All right, so motion is approved. There's no other new business, unfinished business, none. Communications, status of public and private development projects. We got a lot going on, right? Okay.
I'm gonna try to keep it more concise than last time.
Yep.
So I cut out a lot of the nothing much has happened projects and just tried to focus on the ones that have changed. So for our ongoing construction projects, wastewater treatment plant, I'm lying right off the bat, nothing much has changed there, but it's big enough that probably good to know that nothing much has changed, no big surprises. Change orders are within contingency, so that continues to go well. There will be some drilling of dewatering wells out on Richards Road at the Richards Road Lift Station next week. So starting Monday, probably see a traffic detour for a couple of days, not on Main Street, but on Richards. Dorn Hardware is well aware of that. We've spoken with them per the terms.
It'd be to the east.
It'll
Oh,
be
no, sorry,
to
the
the
west,
west.
the west of Main
Yes,
Street.
yep.
Okay.
It'll be to the west of the current building there
Right,
that you see on the corner. So then it will likely sit for a little while before the full project begins this summer. But you might see some of that. Well 6, the one out at the Highlands of Netherwood, has been in commissioning for the last couple of weeks. So last week it was all of the physical things, so pumps, electrical, the reservoir, we had the driller out there. We got our safe samples, so everything passed, things are looking good. We did get our DNR approval letter. I know that the controls team was out there this week, and hopefully are pretty close to wrapping that up and tying the two together. So we're looking at hopefully putting that online within the next couple of weeks. And then probably the most exciting thing, at least for us internally, is that well 3 out on Hillcrest is as of, I think Don texted me at 4:30. It is online now. So we're back to 3 wells, which is a real success for us given the last month. So
And that's the one on Netherwood and Hillcrest.
Netherwood and Hillcrest, yep.
You just-
So
You just have site finishing.
correct,
Okay.
yep. Final restoration gonna happen here as we're sure that we've moved out of this colder weather and that grass will
And you're gonna
take.
paint I guess you're gonna paint the generator, is that right?
We are going to, so we've reached out to the Public Art Committee.
'Cause I don't care.
Yeah, but it's ugly. That mint green doesn't go with anything,
Yeah, that's-
so.
That's the color of the, yeah, okay.
It was the color of like the Wisconsin Civil Engineering building at the UW, so it kind of gives me flashbacks
Oh,
of
I know. I
not
know.
good 50s stuff. So yeah, we have actually reached out to the Public Art Committee to talk about wrapping that generator and as well as the one out at Richards Road. So hopefully we'll get something nice for
That'll look
those
Nice, yeah.
pretty quickly. Into our 2026 construction projects, just real briefly, Alpine and CC. We are looking at a pre-con the last week of May, so construction likely going to start within a week or two after that. So likely in those first couple of weeks of June there. And as we've said before, the contractual end date is August 30th. East Lincoln Street, not a lot of new information on that one, so again, has to start on or after the last day of the 2025-26 school year. Likely going to end in September or October. They're really pushing a tight schedule is the last I heard. They have started submittals with the engineer, so a
They're
lot of that.
replacing all the utilities they're putting what,
Correct.
gas and stuff in the
Yep.
berms, or I call them boulevards, but the berms?
Yes, in the terraces.
Terraces.
Yep, that's Alliant. The last couple of years, you probably noticed they've done a really good job of getting out ahead of our road projects and doing all that gas main replacement. So yeah, that's Alliance team at Intercon doing all that work. As they did here at the corner of Alpine and CC, and I think you're gonna see a little bit more work in the next couple weeks here too. Park and Waterman, that has started. So they hit the ground running this week, and they've already done a significant portion of the underground utility in the last utility installation in the last 4 days. So that should wrap up within the month here. Rachel would want me to say that Brat Bash is on for tomorrow. We have shut down that intersection, but we will have signage everywhere directing people to enter from Spring Street and the west side of Park Street. So, so that is going from, I think, 11 to 1 tomorrow. Senior Center project, the groundbreaking ceremony was this Wednesday. That was kind of a misnomer because it's been going for about a month now. So they're well into excavation and foundation work. Gary Dish is probably going to start in Gary Dish Park in May or June, likely after Speedway, which is the same contractor doing Park and Waterman. After they finish up at Park and Waterman, likely they'll flip over to Gary Dish Park. Let's see, the biggest change on the kind of 2026 design projects is the Bethel Greenacre Park Improvement Project. JT Engineering is working on that. They have come up with 2 concept plans that they shared with us this week. They will share those with the public at that park in the evening next Wednesday. So we will have a PIM and have them present that and just kind of answer questions from people if there is rain or is otherwise not conducive outside to having an outdoor meeting. We do have a backup here at the Village Hall, but it should be a pretty exciting meeting. They've come up with some neat stuff. Private development work, Greenview Preserve, Phase 4 construction on that will start in earnest next Monday. There will be blasting as there was in earlier phases of Greenview Preserve on Tuesday and Wednesday, so that may be audible.
Phase 4, that's gonna be up to the east?
It's gonna be up to the northern limits, so an
Northern limits,
extension
but then north and then east, or no?
kind of teed off, so it's gonna be kind of a double handlebar,
Because right
if
now
you
they're doing
will.
this development that just goes up to like the southeast corner of the cemetery, right?
Yes, so it's an extension, I believe, of Mary Hill. Isn't that Mary Hill Drive that goes up the
Okay,
middle there?
all right,
So it's
okay.
that and kind of 5 or 6 lots on either side of that for the next 2 streets
I'll
up.
go look at it.
Highlands of Netherwood Phase 4, FDG and Capital are working on that. All work will be completed by early July. And then Highlands of Netherwood Phase 5, we've heard very little. So they've indicated they're interested, but no further movement. So kind of wait and see there.
Okay, good, thank you very much. Upcoming planning commission meetings, Thursday, the June 4th, Thursday, July 2nd. Future items is gonna be, we'll see. with the, all the ADUs. Okay, without an objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. A good meeting, good meeting. Oh, thank you. I hate to admit you guys were right.